To the Congress and the President of the United States. We, the people of the United States, who are committed to the present U.S. Constitution, recognizing that a conspiracy's unconstitutional control over Congress has resulted in the passage of unconstitutional so-called laws, far too numerous to be tested in the courts, hereby state our grievances and our petition that 2 specific steps be taken by Congress to correct this condition. Compliance with this petition requires that these steps be taken fully, exactly, and in the order given. Grievances. 1. Unconstitutional so-called laws have been made by Congress and enforced by the elected, appointed, and hired employees of the United States. Conspicuous among the unlawful so-called laws made by officials in lawful positions are 1. Those that enable the radio and television facet of the media-based conspiracy to restrict freedom of speech and press, and 2. Those by which the Congress unlawfully gave the Federal Reserve Bank power to arbitrarily manipulate the value of money. The Federal Reserve Act violated the wording and obvious intent of the Constitution that Congress would determine the value of money by openly recorded laws. 2. The mixing of unconstitutional so-called laws with constitutional laws has become so extensive and complex that countless thousands of individuals in the government can make arbitrary decisions that may or may not be legal, but are generally obeyed simply because it is impractical to contest them. Expedient action in the midst of confusion is the general practice. All semblance of government bylaw is fading away. The cry for law and order is the cry of those drowning in so many unconstitutional so-called laws that there can be no law and order. 3. The total effect is that the media-based conspiracy, which is easily identified by its clear course of actions opposing the Constitution, has such extensive control over the so-called lawmakers within the U.S. government that it has already formed a bureaucratic tyranny. It constantly creates a fertile field for the conspiracy's continued action by pushing for still more so-called laws that increase the present individual fettering confusion. 4. The bureaucratic tyranny grows by taking money from taxpayers and using it to give power and favors to those who support the Constitution-opposing conspiracy. The great bulk of the action that must now occupy the time and efforts of the people, the courts, the Congress, and the President is fighting the conspiracy-controlled bureaucracy. That bureaucracy exists in direct violation of the constitutional provision that, quote, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people, end quote. Petition for redress of grievances. 1. Immediately remove from every federal agency other than those that would be part of a clarified federal government, as set forth in item 2 below, from a position where their regulations have the purported status of federal law, and, in the same act, make provisions whereby they can gradually be removed from the necessity for funding by the federal government. They can be removed as parts of the federal government by changing them into government corporations that can sue and be sued, but whose regulations are not so-called laws that bog down legislation and law enforcement. An example of this procedure exists in the evolution of the Federal National Mortgage Association, Fannie Mae. Provisions for removing them from the necessity for federal funding are contained in the same example. This example is cited only to show that the procedure is workable. Congress already knows how to use it. This first step must be taken first, because the numerous federal agencies cannot be instantly abolished without precipitating chaos. But by their very status as purported parts of the federal government, they create a confusion that makes any approach to the second step hopelessly complicated and therefore impossible. The purpose of this first step is to, quote, clear the decks for action, end quote. This first step can be totally accomplished with one vote on one bill. Anything else can only be construed as an attempt to further the confusion, which enables the conspiracy to retain its unconstitutional control over the United States government. 2. Prepare and submit for ratification an updated but basically unchanged Constitution, or amendments to the original one, that recognize radio, television, and current money that has no intrinsic value, and specifically limit the federal government's parts whose regulations are law to those of A. National defense, B. Regulatory control over subordinate bodies politic, and C. Protection of individuals from the United States itself, and from subordinate bodies politic in the fields clearly specified by the existing United States Constitution. Include in the updated Constitution or amendments submitted for ratification the provision that one body politic must have only one body of law, always completely contained in one document. We reject any argument that things have become too complicated for one body politic to have only one body of law contained in one document. There can be no government by law, and consequently no law-abiding citizens, unless the law is clearly stated. To satisfy the condition of clarity, there must be a completely self-contained document which can be fully reproduced, widely distributed, held in the hands, and be understood by any individual over whom it claims jurisdiction. One document, and one document only, must be recognized as the supreme law of any body politic that claims legal de jure status. This principle, incorporated into the federal Constitution, will do more than limit the federal government. It will serve two other essential purposes. First, it will limit all state and subordinate governments. Second, it will set a precedent among the governments of the world on which, quote, recognition, quote, of one government by another can be based. Therefore, the action to update the Constitution should contain words that carry the following intent. Quote, the body politic known as the United States of America invites acceptance by the powers of the world on the basis of this comprehensive statement of its laws, and hereby declares that it will consider recognition of another body politic only if such body politic publishes in a single document, which it asserts to be the sole and total expression of its intents and purposes, and of the mechanics for bringing conforming pressures on all it proposes to govern. This must include all natural individuals and all fictitious entities subordinate to itself, all things or persons, real or fictitious, which it claims as its component parts. This one document must be offered to the world at large and to the governed as having supremacy over all others, end quote. Recognizing that no other peaceful action can reclaim the United States government from the present control by those who seek to destroy it, we petition that the above recited action be given priority over everything else. Because of the clear and present danger that now threatens our lives and our property, our sacred honor demands immediate action. Congress, and only Congress, has the power to remove the danger by peaceful action. We petition Congress to take the only possible peaceful action now. This call to action is in, quote, Man's Relation to Government, end quote, by Melvin Gorham, ISBN 0-914-752-16-2, Sovereign Press, 326 Harris Road, Rochester, Washington, 98579.